In 1935, a black chemist stared at a pile of white crystals in his laboratory. What he had just created would save millions of lives and revolutionize modern medicine. But in Jim Crow America, he wasn't even allowed to use the same bathroom as his colleagues. This is the story of Percy Julian, the forgotten genius who became one of the greatest chemists in American history. Born in 1899 in Montgomery, Alabama, Percy Julian entered a world where the odds were stacked heavily against him. The grandson of enslaved people, he grew up in the depths of the Jim Crow era, when educational opportunities for African Americans were severely limited. His family had little money, but what they did have was an unshakable belief in the power of education. Young Percy would often stay up late into the night, studying by candlelight because his family couldn't afford electricity. His grandfather, a former slave who had never learned to read, would sit silently beside him, supporting his grandson's determination to learn. "Knowledge is power," his father would tell him, "and nobody can ever take it away from you." Despite being a brilliant student, Julian faced countless barriers. The local high schools wouldn't accept black students, forcing him to attend an under-equipped teacher training school instead. But Julian's brilliance couldn't be contained. He graduated as valedictorian and was accepted into DePauw University in Indiana. At DePauw, Julian worked as a waiter and ditch digger to pay his tuition. He lived in an off-campus attic, because black students weren't allowed in the dormitories. Despite these challenges, he graduated first in his class in 1920 with a degree in chemistry. His professors called him a natural genius. But in 1920s America, being a genius wasn't enough if you were black. After graduating top of his class, Julian faced a harsh reality. No American university would hire him as a chemistry professor because of his race. Even with stellar recommendations, doors kept closing. He was accepted to Harvard for graduate studies, but was denied a teaching assistantship when they discovered he was black, making it impossible for him to afford the tuition. Undeterred, Julian took teaching positions at black colleges while continuing his research. He eventually secured a fellowship to study in Vienna, Austria, one of the few places where he could work without the constant weight of racial discrimination. There, he earned his PhD and experienced for the first time what it felt like to be judged solely on his scientific merit. Returning to America with a doctorate, Julian became a research director at DePauw University. But even with his achievements, he faced constant threats and discrimination. When he and his family moved into a white neighborhood in Oak Park, Illinois, their house was firebombed. Twice, Julian stood guard with a shotgun to protect his family. In the lab, he faced skepticism and sabotage. Colleagues would deliberately contaminate his experiments. Others claimed his breakthroughs were impossible, refusing to believe a black scientist could achieve such results. But Julian had learned to turn adversity into fuel for his determination. "I don't have time to be bitter," he would say. "I'm too busy proving them wrong." Julian's greatest breakthrough came from an unlikely source: soybeans. While others saw just a common crop, Julian saw molecular possibilities that would transform medicine. He discovered a way to synthesize physostigmine, a drug crucial for treating glaucoma, from soybean oil. This achievement was considered impossible by many leading chemists of the time. But that was just the beginning. Julian's most revolutionary work came in synthesizing cortisone and other corticosteroids from plant sterols. Before his breakthrough, cortisone cost hundreds of dollars per drop, making it inaccessible to most patients who desperately needed it for treating arthritis and other inflammatory conditions. In his laboratory at Glidden Company, Julian developed a process to mass-produce these vital compounds at a fraction of the cost. His method was so efficient that within years, Millions of arthritis sufferers who had been confined to wheelchairs could walk again. He also synthesized progesterone, making birth control pills more affordable and accessible. The complexity of Julian's chemistry was staggering. Each synthesis required dozens of precise steps, where a single mistake could ruin weeks of work. He would often sleep in his laboratory, monitoring reactions that needed constant attention. His dedication paid off. By the end of his career, he had over 130 chemical patents to his name. Perhaps his most ingenious innovation was developing a flame-retardant foam from soybeans. This foam would later save countless lives when used by the US Navy in aircraft carriers during World War II. The same man whose house had been firebombed created a substance that protected others from fire. Despite his revolutionary contributions to medicine and chemistry, Julian's name gradually faded from public consciousness. Several factors contributed to this historical erasure. The scientific establishment, still largely segregated and prejudiced, often attributed his discoveries to his white colleagues or supervisors. Major chemical companies would patent similar processes, building on his work without acknowledgement. The media of the time, when it covered Julian at all, often focused more on the novelty of his race than the brilliance of his science. Headlines would read, "Negro scientist makes discovery," rather than exploring the groundbreaking nature of his work. This racial framing ultimately diminished recognition of his scientific achievements. As the civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1960s, Julian's careful, professional approach to fighting discrimination through excellence and achievement fell out of fashion. Younger activists preferred more direct confrontation with systemic racism. While they fought their battles in the streets, Julian's quieter revolution in the laboratory became overshadowed. Even in death, recognition was delayed. When he passed away in 1975, many major scientific institutions that had benefited from his discoveries failed to acknowledge his passing or his contributions. The man who had made life-saving medicines accessible to millions died without receiving the full recognition he deserved. Today, Percy Julian's legacy lives on, in ways both seen and unseen. Every time someone takes a cortisone shot for inflammation, uses birth control, or benefits from countless other medicines derived from plant compounds, they're touching the ripples of Julian's genius. His synthetic processes revolutionized the pharmaceutical industry, making essential medications affordable for millions. But perhaps his greatest legacy lies in the doors he opened for others. Julian hired other black scientists when no one else would, creating opportunities in an industry that systematically excluded them. He proved that scientific brilliance knows no racial boundaries, and that persistence in the face of prejudice can change the world. In 1999, the American Chemical Society recognized Julian's synthesis of physostigmine as one of the top 25 achievements in the history of American chemistry. His Oak Park home, once firebombed by racists, is now a National Historic Landmark. Modern pharmaceutical companies still use variations of his methods to produce medicines. Percy Julian's story reminds us that genius often emerges not despite adversity, but through it. He transformed the bitter soil of discrimination into the fertile ground of determination. In his own words, "I have had one goal in my life, that of playing some role in making life a little better for my fellow men. I believe that the door of opportunity must be opened to all Americans." Today, as we face new challenges in medicine and social justice, Percy Julian's life offers a powerful lesson. Progress comes not just from what we discover, but from who we allow to make those discoveries. His forgotten story shows us that when we break down barriers to human potential, we all benefit from the genius that emerges. If you've been inspired by Percy Julian's incredible story, make sure to hit subscribe for more forgotten geniuses who changed our world. Leave a comment below sharing what surprised you most about this brilliant chemist's journey. Sometimes the greatest heroes in history are the ones we never learned about in school.